What's up YouTube, it's TF Collector, and today I'll be reviewing the Transformers Studios Series Gamer Edition Voyager class THUNDERCRACKER from the Transformers War for Cybertron video game. And before we take a look at the figure itself, let's take a look at the packaging that he comes in. You can see on the front you have a picture of THUNDERCRACKER in robot and alt mode. Transformers Studios Series War for Cybertron THUNDERCRACKER Hasbro 29 steps and whatnot. On this side you get a continuation of that image, an Autobot logo, and more words. He is a Voyager class. On this side, a nice profile shot of THUNDERCRACKER Studios Series War for Cybertron. On the back, a screen grab from the game War for Cybertron THUNDERCRACKER. THUNDERCRACKER joins forces with Megatron to learn how to control Dark Energon. Some product shots you have going on here. Authentic Hasbro. On the bottom, a barcode. On the top, War for Cybertron, THUNDERCRACKER, and Takara Tomy. And one last thing before we take a look at the figure, he does of course include his instruction manual. Studio Series War for Cybertron THUNDERCRACKER, a picture of him there, 8 and up on the back. Takara and Hasbro. And for the figure itself, here is THUNDERCRACKER in his jet mode that he transforms into in the War for Cybertron game. And this is, of course, just a repainted figure of the Starscream mold that was also used for Skywarp. But we finally have THUNDERCRACKER. We have completed the trio of Seekers, but coming in close on the details, you can see nice blue nose cone there on the front. Love the color blue they used for that. You have the big controversial cockpit going on there. It doesn't really bother me anymore, but I do still wish that they would have originally made that a little smaller. But just coming down the side, you can see lots of blue, red stripe, and Decepticon logos on both sides. Decepticon logo up there. On the back, of course, you have your thrusters with your little bloosh spots. If you have any blooshes you want to plug in there, you have another Decepticon logo there. There is the top. You do get a nice little bit of purple right there. There is the bottom. You can kind of see how everything's going to work out. And yeah, overall, it is just a repaint of Starscream and Skywarp, but I do still think this alt mode looks pretty good. And when it comes to accessories, THUNDERCRACKER does include 2, the first of which is this blaster. As you can see, I'm not sure what this one is called. I haven't played the game in forever. Sorry. But here is this blaster. As you can see, nice molded detailing just done in gunmetal gray. And here is the other one. You get this Mace of Death, and you have this little piece. You can see it was used in this blue plastic, and they just painted over in silver with your little purple edge there. Little spikes, not rubber. Don't poke your eyeball out. I don't think you're going to, but if you hit your hand on it real hard, it might hurt a little bit. But these can, of course, store here in this alt mode. And, of course, this is not going to be elegant because one is a big mace. But you can see you do have a slot right there. And you can just tab your little gun in right there. So you can just have your gun going on there. Not elegant, but it's storage. And as far as the big Mace of Death goes, same thing. Just plug it in on the other side if we can get it to plug in. We might just get it to work today. If not, then so be it. It's not meant to be. Oh, there we go. It's meant to be. You can see big Mace of Death, and he can fly off with his Mace of Death. And just for one quick comparison, I figure I'll bring them all in at the same time. Here he is with Gamer Edition THUNDERCRACKER, Gamer Edition Skywarp. So you can see here are your glorious War for Cybertron Studio Series Seekers. And that's about all I have to say for the alt mode. I think it turned out really well. Super happy with the way it looks. It is, of course, just a repaint, but I've always liked this mold. But we are going to go ahead and transform him. So the first thing we're going to want to do is just untab this piece from the legs right in there. Just untab it on each side. And just bring this up on this double hinge, up and out of the way for now. Now what we can do is come down here and work on the legs. The first thing you want to do is just push this piece back, get it out of the way, and then untab this section from the side there. You can see it tabs in right there. Extend to the leg. You do have the little notch that will go underneath the kneecap, like so, and then just bring that panel down. Make sure you get that all the way in there. You will hear it thoop into place. There we go. And then you can bring that panel down, and that will just line up right there. Last thing to do, get your finger in here and pull out his little toe there, his front toe, and there you have a leg all done. Same thing on the other side. Untab this piece, push that back, bring this around, thoop it into place, bring that down, get your nail in there, bring out his toe, and there you have his legs all done. And I'm going to slightly move up the camera so we can keep working our way up. So the first thing we're going to want to do is come here to the arms, and they are tabbed together, so just untab them and rotate them at the bicep joint out like this, and then take this whole section and bring it up. So you want that looking like that. Do the same thing on the other side. Bring that up like so. Bring the arms down and straighten out the double joint there at the elbow. Do the same thing on the other side. Well, yep. This arm does, of course, rip off for weapons, which we will talk about later, but make sure you keep that plugged on there. So just extend that, and now we can work on this section. So you kind of want to get your nail in here so you can untab this piece. This does give me a little bit of trouble sometimes, and I do have to, unfortunately, flex the plastic sometimes, which can be a little bit stressful. There we go. There's one side undone. Come on. Come on. Untab. There we go. You want to get those pieces untabbed. They do tab in up there and can be a little difficult to get untabbed, as you saw there. But just start to bring these pieces down, and now you want to undo the cockpit so you can bring his head out. Just get your finger under there. Bring his head up and bring his head around on this double hinge like so, and rotate his head. Then you can bring his head back like so. Just have that resting there for now, and push the tip of the cockpit under, hold it there so you can bring the other part around, and that will tab right back in where it was. And now you can close this up. You do have tabs and slots. Just close this piece back up. Make sure you have this area right here lined up. That tab there is going to go into that groove there. You got to make sure you line this up perfectly. I do sometimes have some trouble out of this step. We're going to see if I can do it without breaking too much of a sweat. All right, there's one side we got lined up. See if we can't line our other side up. Come on now. Come on now. There we go. Just drop that down, and there you go. Get that all tabbed in. Push his head down so it's oriented properly. Bring these two little pieces out like so, and now we can swing around to the backpack here to finish up. So the first thing we're going to want to do is just swing these pieces upward. Do the same thing with the other one. Swing it upward. Come here to these pieces. Bring them around. Same thing on the other side. Bring it around. Untab this piece and pull it down. Flip this piece in and bring this back up. Tab that back in. And you're going to bring these pieces up on this hinge here, and that little tab there will go into a little notch right there in that silver section to just kind of put that all into place. It's not a real tab, but it kind of holds it all together, sort of. Me personally, I like to throop these back one click so it's more accurate. Bring the backpack up and tab it in. Make sure everything is oriented properly, and there you go. There you have Gamer Edition Thundercracker in his robot mode. And although the big cockpit is still a little bothersome, I am a really big fan of this robot mode. I've got pretty used to the bigger cockpit since we have already got two figures with it. But coming in close on the head sculpt, you can see very, very dim red used for the eyes. You have silver faceplate and gray used for the helmet. A little bit of that purple there once again, of course. Mostly just things you've already seen in jet mode. The cockpit there, just blue on the arms and dark gray plastic, blue. Not a lot of details going on here, just a bunch of blue and gray in cockpit. There's really no picked out details in paint, which is a little unfortunate, but you do still have that little bit there on the wing. Speaking of the wings, they are on the backpack, and the backpack is very compact and very accurate to what we see in the game, so nothing to complain about there. Overall, he's not hollow. He's filled out pretty well. Flat backpack. Overall, looks great. Just wish it had a little bit of paint, even though it is pretty accurate. There wasn't a whole lot of paint on those War for Cybertron characters. I do wish it had a little bit, because it really has nothing. And when it comes to articulation, he is the exact same as Skywarp and Thundercracker. Head is on a ball joint. You can get a rotation full 360. He can look way up. He can look down a little bit. You can kind of get it to wiggle and waggle side to side slightly. You can move this out of the way to accommodate for arm rotation, 360 in and out. Rotation at the bicep. You do have double jointed at the elbow there, so you couldn't get a full range of motion there at the elbow. The wrists do rotate, which is awesome to see. You do have waist rotation, wrist and waist rotation. Wow. Legs can kick forward that far, back, way back there, outward, full splits. You kind of get a thigh rotation. You can see he's on a mushroom peg there, so you get a little bit. You do get slightly over 90 there at the knee, and if we can keep his toe out, the ankles do not rotate, but you do get a lot of ankle tiltage, even though it does kind of bring in a little gap there, which is unfortunate. But if you keep it right there, they've kind of designed this piece to where it'll fill it in, so not a lot to complain about there. Overall, the articulation on this figure is very, very up to par. And if we bring back in his accessories, you can store them. Those two tabs from the alt mode are still available on his back there. But me personally, I like to have him wielding his weapons. Now you can just have him hold the gun if you want. But of course, with these Gamer Edition figures, you get the feature where you can rip their limbs off and stick the gun on their limb to make it game accurate. And I do like the way that looks pretty well. And he can, of course, hold his big Mace of Death. You can just plug that into his hand there, and it is a little heavy for him. He can't really hold it up very well, but he can kind of hold it. You can bend his elbow there and get him holding it. And there you have Starscream ready to hit people with his mace and shoot people with his blaster. And for some quick robot mode comparisons here with Thundercracker, first here he is with his Seeker Brethren, Gamer Edition Starscream, and Gamer Edition Skywarp, so you can see how the Seeker Brethren look together, and I think this is a great mold. Despite the cockpit conflict, I do think the mold turned out pretty well. Of course, I do wish the cockpit was smaller, but me personally, it's grown on me. The mold has, the cockpit hasn't. I still think it needs changed, but I think the mold itself has turned out pretty awesome. Here he is with Gamer Edition Barricade, so you can see how those two look together there. Barricade does not really know how to stand, but you can see how those two look together. And I'm going to switch Thundercracker back over here where he should be. Here he is with Team Leader Lord Megatron, so you can see how he scales with Studio Series Gamer Edition Megs there. And last but of course not least, here he is with a CG image of how he appeared in the game. And as you can see, despite the cockpit being a little bit bigger than it should be, well, really a bit bigger than it should be, you can see they did get him pretty close to his in-game counterpart. So this has been my review for the Transformers Studios Series Gamer Edition Voyager class Thundercracker from the War for Cybertron video game. And overall, as I mentioned throughout this review, I think this mold is a very good Seeker mold. I think it looks great on all three of the main Seekers. Thundercracker being my favorite paint that a Seeker usually gets. I love the blue coloring. He is my favorite looking Seeker, maybe not personality wise, but as far as looks go, I do prefer the looks of this Thundercracker over the other two Seekers that we have got. Now, I do have a few small complaints. Of course, the cockpit has always been a spark of debate since this mold was first unveiled, and it still is. The cockpit is a lot bigger than it needs to be. They should have shrunk that down and made him more screen accurate. But a complaint of mine with this guy also, and with the other two Seekers, is they didn't really get much paint on them. As you can see, he's mostly blue and gray and has no paint whatsoever anywhere on this robot mode, hardly. I mean, the little bit of purple up here might be paint, but other than that, maybe the silver. But you see, there's really not anything to be noticed, honestly. I wish they would have picked out a little more details and some paint, but overall I do still enjoy the mold. The transformation is always fun to do. The robot mode and alt mode look great other than the cockpit, and I'm going to keep complaining about the cockpit because it is really the only complaint about this guy other than the paint, as I've mentioned. So if I had to give this guy a rating based on my thoughts, I'm going to give him an 8 out of 10. I do think this mold is pretty solid, and I am happy with the way this figure has turned out. I will certainly get him off the shelf here and there and transform him back and forth because he is at least a fun figure to transform, if nothing else. So that is my review for Gamer Edition Thundercracker. He gets an 8 out of 10. Don't forget, never sacrifice sacrifice the things you love for the approval of others. I know I keep promising Studio Series 42 Long Haul will be the next review. I'm not promising that this time. There will be one more before I get to him. We will get to him eventually, though. I promise we will get back on our journey through the older Studio Series figures eventually. But for now, I have a couple of these newer figures to take a look at. So we have KSI Widow coming next, and then we will get back to Long Haul if I had to guess. But that is the plan for now, and until then, roll out. Peace.